Hello and welcome to another edition of Only in Illinois, your weekly video recap from Reboot, Illinois. I'm Madeline Dubeck here with Matt Dietrich, and we have survived another election.
Indeed we did. Late night.
Quite a late night, quite a riveting, suspenseful evening. We actually still have one outcome that isn't known yet.
Right, the race for Illinois State Treasurer between Republican Tom Cross and Democrat Mike Frerichs still has not been called. Neither candidate has claimed victory. As of this moment, there was just over a 21,000 vote lead for Tom Cross. That's about 0.6 of 1%. However, the Frerichs campaign believes that they said tens of thousands of absentee ballots and other provisional ballots, those kind of things, are remaining to be counted. Many of those in Cook County, and that's where Frerichs has had a pretty significant lead. So this is one that may go several more days. The Cross campaign, by the way... I feel badly
for both of those candidates and their campaigns, because it's got to be...
And if it remains this close, then there's a possibility of a recount, which could add even longer. Tom Cross sent a message to supporters the day after Election Day saying that he was assembling a team of experts in case there was a recount. So they're preparing for it.
So we've been telling everybody for weeks that every vote counts, and it's going to.
In this race, yes.
It's absolutely going to. So let's talk about the governor's race. That's the big marquee race in Illinois.
Right.
And you know, it's kind of funny because I think just about everybody we talked to heading into Election Day didn't want to say anything beforehand, but most people kind of thought Quinn had the edge.
Right.
He ran a pretty effective campaign, and this is still considered to be a Democratic state, although maybe the Cross-Frerichs race will change our minds about that, I don't know. But still a Democratic state, and the Democrats have had much more success at the get out the vote operation.
Right.
And yet the outcome is we are going to have a new governor, Governor-elect Bruce Rauner, who ended up winning by 5 percentage points.
That's
fairly
fairly decisive when you consider that 4 years ago Pat Quinn won by less than 1%. So a 5% margin is pretty significant in a race that we all thought was going to be close. We knew it was going to be close either way.
Yeah. So Rauner won really on the strength of the collar counties and came closer to Quinn in suburban Cook, which helped him out quite a bit. And voter turnout ended up being a little bit lower than anticipated in the city of Chicago, and so that was kind of the demographic key. But we had an interesting situation, which you and I have looked at this week, with Governor-elect Bruce Rauner winning, and yet we had really Pat Quinn and the Democrats' issues on the ballot, and people voted overwhelmingly for an increase in the minimum wage and for an additional tax on people earning more than $1 million a year. Those are both advisory questions, so nothing's going to change immediately. But what do you make of all that?
Well, what I found interesting about that is that voters on, let's just focus, there were 5 total questions, including 2 constitutional amendments. But the biggest hot button issues, I think, were raising the minimum wage. That was one of Pat Quinn's big campaign themes. And also this idea of a millionaire tax, 3% extra tax if you make over $1 million, and it goes directly to education. Those were forced onto the ballot essentially by the Democratic legislature in an effort to get Democrats to the polls on Election Day, ostensibly to vote for Pat Quinn. What I found interesting was the minimum wage and millionaire tax, not only did they pass, well, not only did they receive approval, they got landslide approval. 67% of voters wanted an increase of the minimum wage to $10 by January 1st, and 63% said, yes, we want to see a millionaire's tax of 3%. Now, at the same time, what I found was so interesting is that as they're voting for these 2 big, Democratic issues, They're also electing the governor candidate.
Republican.
The Republican governor candidate who is most likely to do everything within his power to make sure those things don't happen. Even though Rauner said during his campaign, and he got caught reversing himself, but he was...
On the minimum wage.
Right, he was pretty steadfast on a minimum wage, saying that he would favor raising it if it came along with some business incentive laws. Well, you know, I don't think the legislature is going to be eager to bargain with a Governor Rauner on anything pertaining to the minimum wage, knowing that they've got this mandate. We've heard Pat Quinn in his concession speech say that he may try to push that through in his 2 remaining months in office. So that might be off the table by the time...
In a couple of weeks.
Right.
Yeah.
But that might be off the table by the time Rauner comes in. But the millionaire tax is something different. That has to happen via constitutional amendment, which means it's got to have 2/3 legislative approval, which means that Bruce Rauner could be irrelevant in it if the Democrats can muster all 71 of their votes and push that through. But at the same time, that's going to put Governor Rauner into a position where he's going to have to voice some opposition to this and have some pushback. It'll set up an interesting, an interesting scenario at minimum. And I can't see House Speaker Michael Madigan, who he pioneered the millionaire tax issue. I can't see him letting this sit when the legislature reconvenes in January.
Governor-elect Bruce Rauner said the right things during his acceptance speech or victory speech on Tuesday evening about needing to reach out and work with the Democratic legislature and all involved. And he's also very quickly announced a pretty extensive transition team featuring some fairly prominent Democrats as well as Republicans. Former White House Chief of Staff Bill Daley, the brother of the longtime Chicago mayor, who did run for governor for a little while.
Briefly.
And Glenn Pichard, former congressman from deep southern Illinois and also a one-time candidate for governor.
Right, lost to George Ryan.
Lost to George Ryan in 1998. We have Manny Sanchez, a prominent Latino who was heavily involved in the Obama for President campaign. We have Corey Brooks, an African-American minister from the city of Chicago. And so a pretty diverse and prominent group, so we'll see how that all develops.
And I think from the moment of his victory speech on election night, Bruce Rauner did a quick 180 from the tone of the campaign, which had really gotten very nasty toward the end, and sounded a very conciliatory note in that speech. And I think he's, at least early on it appears, that he's trying to make that a big theme as he prepares to take office.
We'll see how conciliatory Speaker Madigan and President Culler tonight.
That'll be the big question.
All right, so that's it for this week's edition. Thank you for watching. We'll see you on the next edition of Only in Illinois.